Welcome to this episode of Reece's Reviews, brought to you by mygeekculture.com.au. I'm your host, Matt, and this is my co-host, or actually I'm the co-host, and technically this guy is the host. It's who this podcast is named after. It's Reece. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well. I'm pretty sure think it's a, I don't think it's like me being the host and you're the host. I think it's a joint thing. I think we're just partners in this side of things now. I think it could be Reece's Reviews, but it could be something, maybe it's something we can look at something later on down the track, but it very much be a partnership between the two of us. We're both co-hosts in a way, I think.
Okay, then. So I'm your co-host, Matt, as well with my co-host, Reece. So
yeah.
There's no one driving the car right now. We're just all in the passenger seat.
We're in a Tesla. It's got self-drive.
Yeah, fair enough. So the whole concept behind this podcast or Reece's Reviews is that I go through Reece's Letterboxd account because he is a filmography lover and nerd. And he watches a lot of movies, which is fantastic. And it can be old, can be new. He gives honest opinions. And here I am. I'm going to question some of his reviews, really. So
bring it on.
He has no idea what I'm going to choose for him, so I'm going to test out his mind and his thoughts and everything else.
Yeah.
So usually we will go, and this is only early stages with this show, that we will go one new movie and then one classic movie. But depending on what Reece has also seen as well, it could be two classics or it could be two newbies. Who knows? Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the time of the recording, the films are new. So if you're listening to this 2 years later or 5 years later, then those newbies will be classified as classics.
Yep.
I hope you got your head around that. All right. Well, I am going to give you a test on this one because I have not seen it, but I have seen the originals, except for
I
probably.
know where this is going.
I haven't seen the previous reboot, but I've seen most of the TV series that it's also based on. But the film Karate Kid Legends from 2025.
Yeah.
So, please explain. Or tell me what this movie is about and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries. So Karate Kid Legends is a continuation. It's not a reboot. It's a continuation of the story in a simplistic way from the originals. So it does bring back Daniel LaRusso from the original Karate Kid trilogy, and it also brings in and makes him part of one universe with the so-called reboot with Jackie Chan's Mr. Han, and brings him back into the fold and makes it one big universe. And it's set as around this.
So it's like a Sony Spider-Man universe type thing where they've managed to get the two Spider-Mans and integrate it into the multiverse.
Pretty much. And they made it around story. So they pretty much, it's the whole story is based around this one kid who is Jackie Chan's nephew, I think. Yeah, it's his nephew. And he's Jackie Chan's Mr.
Because the Jackie Chan one, like, it was just called The Karate Kid. And that
it was called The Karate Kid with Jaden Smith.
And that was a reboot, wasn't it?
It was marketed as a reboot at the time, and now when they've done this one, they just made it all one kind of universe. But going into this film, you think it's going to be a continuation, but they don't reference Jackie Chan's movie at all.
Okay.
Like there is no way they don't reference Jaden Smith's character at all, anything that happened in that movie, nothing. So this movie is pretty much in a separate kind of thing. So if you haven't seen that Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, then you're not going to be lost going into this one. They bring certain aspects of the only thing they bring up from the Jackie Chan is, back in the original Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio, is they do wax on, wax off. In Jackie Chan's version, they do a similar thing where they do jacket on, jacket off. And so they bring that technique into it, which is the only really tie they have with the other two films. And so that's the only thing there. So the both film is based around his nephew. He's training in China and Jackie Chan's character does run his own school and everything. And then his mum, played by the beautiful Ming-Ya Wen, gets a job in America, in New York, and they move to New York. And then it's the whole premise of going to a new place, which is very stereotypical of Karate Kid. Fish out of water, going to a new place, having to start again, and learning all about the different culture, about what you're going into, and as always, falling into a crowd tournament coming about. Bad kid in a bad tournament, a bad karate team, bad teacher, all that usual tropes of Karate Kid, which is what you get with this one. So that's pretty much the premise of what Karate Kid is.
Sweet.
And Legends, yeah.
And in comparison, so there's only roughly a nearly a 10-year difference, or only a couple of years difference between Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan. In regards to age, because
are they? Yeah, I actually don't know how the age difference between Jackie and Ralph is, but Jackie just does look a little bit older than Ralph does. But I'm not too sure how old they actually look.
Well, Ralph Macchio is 63 years old, right? And Jackie Chan, who is basically a guy who doesn't really age. He's 71, so he's only 8 years older.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. But as you said at the beginning, this universe is constantly regressing and moving. I huge fan of Cobra Kai on Netflix, but it did start off as a YouTube original series with the first season, and then Netflix picked it up for the rest of the series. So I'm a big fan of Cobra Kai, and the way they just took the character of a one stereotype villain in Johnny Lawrence and they flipped him to end up being a hero and a good guy in the end.
He's always been the good guy. If you ever watched How I Met Your Mother, Barney Stinson.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Ralph Macchio's not the Karate Kid.
Exactly.
William Zabka is. Oh, God, I love How I Met Your Mother. But yeah, so the universe is just constantly growing. And in this film, this continues on with that as well. The legacy does continue on with that. This film also does take a lot of legacy to heart, even when it comes to the martial arts and certain techniques. They definitely reference Bruce Lee quite a few times. So if you know certain techniques and certain moves of Bruce, then you are going to pick them up. For one thing, is the 1-inch punch that Bruce Lee was very known for, or the whole "be water, my friend." They sprinkle that through this one, which Jackie Chan is always unknown that he looks up to Bruce. He worked with Bruce Lee when he first was starting out in the industry in Hong Kong and those kind of things. So he definitely referenced that as well. So it's definitely shown with that. Going into my review of the film, I still enjoyed it. You're getting a Karate Kid. The story is nothing original. You can't get anything else out of it. So kid comes out, fish out of water, goes to a new city, meets some new people in that city, finds out that there's a bad guy, takes the bad guy, bashes him, gets onto him and all that kind of stuff. Eventually finds out that it's a tournament, learns to fight a bit more efficiently, goes to tournament, and that's how the story kind of progresses. And then those kind of things. The one thing I did put in my review that with the market, I'm not too sure if you want to do spoiler warning or anything like this with this.
Spoiler warning. There we go.
I won't do spoilers. I won't do spoilers.
You can do spoilers. You can do spoilers. Okay, so if we say spoiler warning enough, then they know.
I am under the mindset when it comes to reviewing side of things. One of the things I point out is if it's in a film, I kind of give you a bit more of a leeway of not doing spoilers straight away, or at least until the film goes off at being theatrical. It's finished its theatrical run.
Yep.
When it comes to TV shows and those kind of things, I think that you can do spoilers the next day or the day after because you don't have no restrictions not to watch. If you really wanted to watch a show on its premiere, then you would watch it the day it drops. So, but with your audience and with, sorry, I will backtrack, with our audience because you are my co-host, I won't do the spoilers for that. All I would say is with the marketing of this film, it's shown to you that Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, it makes it seem that they're in the entire film. They're not.
Gotcha.
They pretty much come in, like Jackie Chan is sprinkled a little bit more than Ralph, but they don't become a main presence in the film towards the end of the second act. And then they're in the third act. So the whole film is based around the lead character. And based around him and his mum. That's the main, and this new friend that they meet, that the main character meets when they get to New York in his pizza joint and things like that. That's the main character that they interact with. So if you're going into what wishing to be a big continuation of the Karate Kid, have Ralph and Jackie Chan, and when it's going to be their movie throughout the entire thing, you are going to be a little bit disappointed in that fact.
All right. So this is definitely a continuation of the 3 Karate Kid movies, the original. Even do you think the Hilary Swank version as well?
I personally haven't seen that one.
Oh, there's a challenge for you.
No, I when it comes to the Karate Kid, I stuck with Ralph. I watched the 3. I watched Cobra Kai and I watched Jackie, and I haven't actually watched Hilary Swank's one, even though it does have Mr. Miyagi in it. I've actually haven't sat down and watched that one because I haven't gotten the best. There hasn't gotten the best reviews of that one because a lot of people didn't like part 3 of Karate Kid, and that one got worse reviews than what part 3 did. So
yeah, it was more or less a marketing grab.
Like it was more of like, let's see if we can try and milk this more so, and the franchise was pretty much done by
especially then. When Ralph Macchio is getting older and they needed no longer a kid, so he was just more of a young adult.
So this film, like I think, but the standout on this film is Ben Wang, who plays the lead character Lee. He is incredible. He has so much charisma that you can see this kid's going to go a long way. He's got a new film coming out in a couple of months called The Long Walk, and you wouldn't think, but the antagonist of that film, the villain of that movie, is Mark Hamill. So it's gonna be.
I've seen the trailer for that where it starts off with chirpy and everything, then it turns out it's a bit of a horror story.
A massive twist.
A massive twist, and written by Stephen King.
Yeah. So Ben Wang is in that one. So the whole film centers around him. He carries the film brilliantly. His martial arts techniques and his acrobatics with this is brilliant, and the fight choreography is great. Is what you need from these kind of films. You want a good fight choreography, and the director directs it well. Where you find a lot of the action scenes, especially in fight scenes in a lot of films, where it really comes down to the editing and how the directors shoot it. Because there is very easy where you have a great martial artist, but if the director doesn't know how to fight, how to direct fight choreography, they can shoot it very rushed or edit it very badly, where you can't actually see what the actor and what the stunt performer or what the actor's doing. And so at least in this one, you can actually see the technique that Ben Wang has and the choreography that he's learned and those kind of things. So I definitely commend him for that. Jackie Chan, I saw this with my wife, and I was saying on a few occasions that I was getting a lot of old school Jackie Chan vibes with his comedy. Like he has some little quick white one-liners and some comedy spits that are just like make me go, oh man, I miss Jackie Chan. Like he's great. Like he's a great actor overall, but his comedy is just, there's not many people that can do what he does. And the little the interaction he has with Ralph, certain quips he has with Ralph when they're trying to teach them different styles. Jackie Chan's got one way and Ralph has got the Miyagi way. And in teaching the two different versions, it was just absolutely fun to watch. Is it the best Karate Kid out of the saga? No, but it's still a fun time at the movies, still enjoyable to watch. Yes, like I said, story's not original. It's not going to do anything big when it comes to screenplay, but it is still a good time at the movies, and it's a good sit down and watch and had a bit of fun.
So it's a good installment to the series.
Yeah, it doesn't tarnish the legacy and the franchise that it has. It's not like it's going, oh my, you don't walk out of it going, that was a complete waste of time. I don't know why they made it. Yes, it could have done better when it comes to narrative, and they could have done certain things with the script and those kind of things. But outside of that, it does deliver in certain aspects. It does keep you inspired, and the choreography and the fighting and all that kind of stuff. And if anyone is interested in Cobra Kai, there's an Easter egg there for you, which I'll leave it at that.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So out of a 5, can you remember what you rated it on Letterboxd?
Yeah, I've got it here. I gave it a 3.5. So
nice.
it gave me enough confidence that I could sit down and watch it again and have some enjoyable out of it. The pros definitely outweigh the cons in this film, and I would rate it high. I think the director did as good as a job as he possibly could bring coming into this franchise. Jonathan is, I think his name is Ed Westall. I think it's Ed Westall. I can't pronounce his last name. I think it's Ed Westall. I think his name is. I personally haven't heard much about him and know what he's done. I think it's one of his first films that he's done in the American market, but I think he did a pretty good job, and bringing in 2 legacy actors of Ralph and Jackie are great. Like I said, don't go into this film thinking you're going to get a Ralph Macchio Jackie Chan movie. This is a Bang Wang movie with supporting cast of Jackie and Ralph.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Reece, for your review on Karate Kid Legends. All right, now
what's next on the agenda, mate?
Let me just spin the metaphorical wheel of movie choices, and we're going for a classic.
We should do that. We should have like a metaphorical thing that you can put in the where you hit a wheel and goes.
Could do that. Now it's fell on a liner here, so I'm going to spin it one more time. And it's landed on an Australian classic. 2010, Tomorrow When the War Began.
So this is a funny thing. I was watching this the other night, and my wife came in from work, and the first thing she goes, and she looks and goes, "Are you watching Tomorrow When the War Began?" And she just looks at me and goes, "Why?" I'm like, that movie, he goes, "That movie is so bad." And I went, movies hits us all in different ways. You don't like it. I enjoy it for what it is.
I remember seeing this movie with you in the cinema, right? You invited me.
Wow, you have a great memory. I remember I saw this film a few times at the cinemas. So
no, I remember you randomly inviting me to see this film, right? Mm-hmm. Even though I was living in interstate, and I came down to visit, and I went to it and not realizing the history behind it. I just thought, oh yeah, the trailer looks good. Had no idea that it was based on the book series. And when I watched it, I'm going, wow, this is actually a really good Australian film. Like you could see they actually had a budget. Yeah. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. And but please recap or review this film, please.
Yeah. So from referencing last episode when we were talking about I would say, because it was out of the norm, I would say our special episode of covering Supernova. Having that interaction with Lincoln Lewis and everything, it kind of inspired me going, you know what, I want to go back down the Australian rabbit hole, and I wanted to watch one of his films. So I went back and I rewatched Tomorrow When the War Began. And it just, yes, you feel that this film is it does have the Australian feel to it. You know, it's I don't know what it is. The aesthetics that you have when you watch a American film compared to a foreign film, you can totally tell the way they shoot it, the way the cameras that they use, and those kind of things. It's definitely shot a different way, and I think you can tell when you watch this film tomorrow when the war began. You definitely feel the Australian is put on display really much into your face, like the accents and the props and the cinematography and the scenery that they use is definitely on point. And I think I read this book growing up, and so around the time this film was coming out, I think I read it, and they pretty much do a good adaptation for it. Like all source material is they're gonna take some liberties and they're gonna make some creative choices to make it. Some things can work well on a page, but they can't translate to the screen the same way.
Of
So they
course,
do make
yeah.
some adaptations and things like that. But I think in this instance, they do as best as they possibly can. This was at the time one of the biggest productions Australian have made, with the fact that they were really hoping this film was going to get a trilogy. And unfortunately, I think due to this film did pretty well from memory in Australia, but it didn't do well overseas, which didn't
That's what they were
unfortunately
banking on.
allow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just didn't think. Yeah, with that being said, it just didn't actually have a lot of good marketing behind it to get that pull from American audience, which I think as well because foreign markets are so used to American style films, bringing a film like this done by an with a completely different crew, I think they were expecting something a bit more different, which unfortunately didn't come through. Which is a shame because I talked to Lincoln, and he's kind of upset about it that he didn't get to come back and do the trilogy that he wanted to do, and because the groundwork was definitely set to do a lot more for this. So
Yeah, well,
just running,
I went into it not knowing it was a book series. The fact it was
yeah,
a series and it was designed to be more. And when we got to the end of the movie and then finished on the cliffhanger, I've gone, oh, what? I want more.
yeah,
And then when I found out down the track that it, yeah, as you just mentioned, it wasn't the hit that they would hope for in regards to international sales. So
yeah.
yeah, it was a big disappointment, especially for me who had just been introduced to the series, and I thought, yeah, there's something here. Like this is great. And
Yeah,
speaking of the cast, how you mentioned Lincoln Lewis, there was some also up and comers as well who have made names for themselves.
yeah. So you go back in time, like this film was shot in '09, released in '10. There's a lot of actresses that are, I would say, I think one of the big ones that came out of this one was Phoebe Token and Chris Pang. I think they were the two ones that were have had the biggest careers out of Australia from this film. Phoebe Tonkin went on to being in Vampire Diaries in the originals. She's done amazing films across the board now and TV series and things like that. And also when it comes to Chris Pang, he plays Lee in the film. He's gone on and do certain things. I think the last film that I saw him in, he was not in the best of it. I actually enjoy it, but it's a lot of people didn't like it, which was the rebooted Charlie's Angels film with Naomi Scott and Elizabeth Banks that did, and he was in that again. He played an Australian, which was kind of ironic. But yeah, so but I think the star of this film is definitely Caitlin Stacey, who plays Ellie. She's the one that you follow on the story is, and it's definitely I think this film definitely the way the world is going at the moment does put things in perspective. Like the whole purpose of these kids are in a rural town in Australia. They want to go have some fun. They go out to the bush for a weekend and they come back and they've been invaded and how they're going to deal with that and if they want to fight back how they're going to fight back and do those kind of things. So this film was just I found that it showed its Australian know how to do suspense. They can do action practically and make it look intense and thrilling. The screenplay was indeed adapted found in a way that's makes you emotionally invested in the characters and makes you want to make them survive in certain aspect as well, and makes you also not like certain characters at certain points. And but at the same time, a lot of people think of it Lincoln Lewis's character like that he makes certain choices that you think he wouldn't make, but you get put in those circumstances, and your what's it called, that your fight or flight response kicks in. Who knows what you will do, and kind of thing. So, and ends up having a redemption arc at the end as well, and those kind of things. So the whole thing is done practically. The cast is fantastic. Unfortunately, yeah, like I said, the box office didn't turn out like that fantastically, and didn't get a trilogy that they wanted to.
But it did.
I personally know what happens to certain characters because I think I've read the first 3 books.
But fast forward to years later, like in real life, that is. And didn't they do a TV series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Australia tried to do it again. They tried to make a series out of it, and again, didn't work. They did a series out of it. It went 1 season, and it got cancelled.
Oh, bummer. I did not know that.
Yeah. So, fortunately, just the story of the Tomorrow When the War Began, just don't think hasn't been adapted in a way where it can have a sustainable franchise from that. And even in like that, there's a American style version of what this story entails, which I don't know if you know. Pretty sure it was Patrick Swayze did a series or a film in the 70s and 80s called Red Dawn. Do you know about that?
Yep.
Yeah. So they tried to do a live action film adaptation of that film for modern audiences, and they brought in a very young Chris Hemsworth at the beginning of his career in America to play the lead character in that. And that I walked out of that film kind of going, this is pretty much Tomorrow When the War Began, but American budget. But I didn't realize that it was an adaptation it was a remake.
Gotcha.
But I actually thoroughly enjoyed that Red Dawn film, and it was full of a lot of heart and action and a great cast all through. But I just felt like I was watching an American version of Tomorrow When the War Began, and I kind of walked out and going, oh, I wish I could get more Tomorrow When the War Began and bring back the cast, but which unfortunately we won't get. So, yes, to sum it up, the film was done brilliantly. They showcased Australia in beautiful ways. I have a soft spot for it because there's a lot of cinematography and a lot of locations shouting in the Blue Mountains.
Yep, I recognise
they showcase it beautifully.
Yep.
And I love that. I just love seeing Australia put on location. And put onto the big screen and just showing how beautiful our country is. So it's fantastic in that way, and just brings when it comes to adapting of a screenplay, allows you to get more eyes on the source material and maybe hopefully get more attention to that, to people to read it and learn a bit more about the characters and things like that. So I would recommend it for anybody who's a fan of Australian cinema to give it a go. It's got good action, good characters. Yes, some of the dialogue is not the greatest. It is still in an Australian and adapted screenplay, and so it does fail short on a lot of that point. But if you get past that and you look into it, the fact of the adaptation of the characters and the world that it sets up, and just put yourself in their position about what would you do, it does make you ponder questions about how that works. So I found that's what I enjoy about the film. So I gave it a 3.5 stars, just like I did with Karate Kid Legends. I could watch this. I watch this film every number of years just to get a bit more of enjoyment and appreciate Australian cinema. There is cons to it. Yes, there are definitely things we could do better for it and things we could change, but you can still sit down and enjoy it and marvel in what Australia tries to do with a good American budget, because the film was made on not the biggest of budgets, but like I said, it's 25 million budget,
which is huge for Australia. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Massive.
And it only grossed 16 million 500 worldwide.
Yeah, that's the downside.
It didn't even break even.
No. So while, like, say, Australia probably contributed to at least 6 million of it, probably, or 10 million, but the rest obviously would have come from overseas. But that's what they were banking on, because they would have had to have larger studio investors to make more of the other stories.
Yeah, so I think it did okay in the UK. Like it got a bit of a UK audience, but yeah, it's just like it did well for Australia. For Australia, it did very well because Australia we support our own. So we went out. A lot of people went out and saw it. Everyone at the time was a big fan of the novel series, and it did win a lot of awards in the Australian cinema circuit, so which was fantastic. But when it went to the UK, it did okay in the UK, but as soon as it got brought out into the US market, it flopped. It didn't do anything, which unfortunately the marketing budget, along with the tag that the cinemas have to get, and then the budget for the film, it just didn't make it up. So unfortunately, we fell short.
Cool. So,
And
so with the author being John Marsden, who wrote the novel, how many are there in the series?
there is one, two, three, four, five. There's seven in the book in the series.
7. Wow. So
Yeah,
definitely they would have wanted the big backing from studios overseas to try and
yeah. From
support
what
it.
yeah, absolutely. So what I understand from one of my discussions with Lincoln Lewis, what they were planning on doing is making the second film and then maybe taking two kind of plot and storylines from two of the books and making them into the third one to try and at least get the narrative through. And if they could do more, they could. But unfortunately, everything kind of fell short. And then, unfortunately, it took quite a while before the Australian market the Australian film industry to kind of back another high octane action because Tomorrow When the War Began came out in 2010, and it wasn't until 2018 where what's it called? What's his name? Luke Spark released another sci-fi action film called Occupation. That was the next film that was kind of a big Australian budget, the biggest budget Australia has done. But that was even more than what they put into Tomorrow When the War Began, and thankfully Occupation did well, so they made a sequel called Rainfall, and we've been waiting for the sequel to Rainfall for quite a while because they released Rainfall just before the pandemic,
Hmm.
and then we're still waiting on the sequel for that one to come through. Apparently, it's still in the pipe, but Luke Spark's been hard at work doing another film with Australian cast. Ryan Quanten, he's leading a new film of Luke Sparks called Primitive War, which is a sci-fi fantasy dinosaur kind of time sort of film, big action film that they filmed up on the Gold Coast in Brisbane. So waiting on that one, but yeah, getting a bit off track. But Tomorrow When the War Began, good action film. I would say if you want to have a fun time and you want to appreciate Australian cinema at trying to do its best to put us on the map, then give this one a shot. Put under the suspended disbelief in certain points, forego certain parts when it comes to the script and the screenplay, but overall, it's a good bit of time, and it does ponder you the question saying, what would you do in that circumstance? And go from there.
And I remember when I saw it, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoyed it. No, but you know what I did? You know what I did do though, right? Because I'd never had owned a copy of it. And when I went op shopping on the weekend, I found it for $1 on DVD at the op shop. So I picked it up. I was going to buy it on iTunes and then I saw it there and went, all right, I got it now. So I now have a copy of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought it on Blu-ray when it came out. So I've got a digital copy and I got a physical copy. So
No, but
I'm supporting Australian that way.
I agree with you with the movie, with the style, the cinematography, the special effects. And again, so damn impressed. It was an Aussie movie that had a $25 million budget. A lot of Aussie movies these days struggle to get $1 million. So, or the person who created it has to mortgage their house or do whatever. And if anything, maximum 9-10 million. But 25 million for back then is just absolutely unheard of. So
Yeah, which kind of makes you sad. Like, unfortunately, we have what's the word for it? People have would you say impression
the
or a
stigma,
stigma? Like people
Aussie
kind of
cinema
think of
has a
Australian
stigma.
cinema is that we have crap films, which is completely false. But trying to make your case in that instance, our film industry isn't huge. Everyone just compares to overseas with America or the UK when it comes to their film industry. When you compare them to Australia, ours is so small. We've got hardly anything. And then when we try and put something out there to a wider market, it just doesn't latch on, and it definitely is a shame. There's a lot of we do a lot. We're very well with our indies and our comedies and our dark humors and things like that. But when it comes to making films for a bigger market, when it comes to because the biggest thing that you can sell is probably action and those kind of things, which can appease a wider market. But we don't Australia can't do that too often. And then when you talk about films that Australia has made that are Australian crew, Australian director, Australian cast, you can't think too many outside of Mad Max, which put us on the map in a way, or Crocodile Dundee, which those films were made back in the 80s. So from the 80s until now, you don't have too much of a gap with a
Yeah.
how much we can put out there. Because I have discussions with people going, "Oh, Australia doesn't make any good thing. We just suck." I went, "No, we don't. But you just got to put yourself out there and watch films that are not just one genre. You got to see what we can do in other aspects. We put a lot of Australia film industry puts a lot into I find into the TV series, and just our films just don't get enough of the marketing behind it and the push to get around. I think the last, like you and I were kind of when Saw Spit.
Yeah.
How much of that probably didn't do too well around Australia, and they took them years to get that film off the ground and
22
those kind of
years.
things.
It took 22 years to get that film off the ground.
Yeah. And I guarantee that probably film didn't do too well in the Australian market because no one wants to go out and support it. They're all supporting the foreign, which, yes, I'm guilty of it myself. I do go out and watch foreign films. American films are foreign. They come over and I watch the summer blockbusters. But if there's Australian films going to coming out and being put on theatrically, I want to support those jobs of the filmmakers and all the people involved on the crew and the actors and that kind of stuff. So I want to watch all that. And one of the good things about going to cons and that you're meeting these stars and things like that. Like when I was talking to Lincoln Lewis, he was talking about some films that he's done, and some of the producers are finding it really hard to distribute. Like he did a film up on Fraser Island, where they can put it on Foxtel, but it's all they can put it on.
Yeah, Foxtel or Stan.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking to him about, and saying he's trying to convince the marketers and the producers to put the film on Stan because that's an Australian streaming service, but
Yeah.
they're just putting on a Foxtel. Not everybody has Foxtel,
No.
and a streaming service is a lot easier to get, and Stan is easy to get. So Australia we just don't unfortunately do as well as we can, but it's just we need to get the stigma of the reception of what we have for Australian films and boast them more that we do make great content. We just need to support them.
So there you go. You heard Reece. Go out there and support Australian films. Yeah, support the industry.
It's rich coming from me, but I would go and see, like, personally, when Occupation came out, I think I saw it 3 times in the cinemas. I loved it that much. A fun, entertaining sci-fi action film that it's all done through Australia with practical effects. I saw that 3 times. I loved it, but I also go, you know what? How can we make studios listen? The only way we know how. Money.
Bums on seats.
It's the only way it's the only way they learn. If we show them that we are interested and we like this, then they will make more. And with the success of Occupation, they made the second one. So the only way we can support our fellow film industry in Australia is to go out and watch them and do word of mouth and market it and do wherever we can and talk about it like you and I are doing here. So
there you go.
Fantastically.
So Tomorrow When the War Began from 2010, you gave it 3.5 stars. I gave it 4 stars out of 5.
When did you last time you watched it?
Probably last time was at the cinema.
So you are in need for a rewatch.
Yes. Well, that wraps up this episode of Reese's Reviews. So we've just recapped 2 movies, Karate Kid Legends and Tomorrow When the War Began. 2 polar opposite films altogether, but that's what was on Reese's Letterboxd. So, and if you want to follow Reece on Letterboxd, what is your Letterboxd account again? Can I say Letterboxd one more time? Letterboxd.
Casual Sky Guy. That is my handle on Letterboxd. So it's Casual Sky Guy, and with casual, so it's C, S, and G is all capital letters. So Casual Sky Guy.
We'll put the link to his account in the show notes. So thanks
cool.
again,
Sounds
Reece.
good.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with that I can quiz you on for the next episode, whenever that ends up being happening. So make sure that you're following our podcast so you can get the latest episode and download it straight away. And we're available on every podcast platform, including the My Geek Culture YouTube channel. So if you're listening to us on there, hello, how are you? Well, thanks
Keep
again,
being
Reece.
awesome.
Yes. And thank you again, Reece, for joining. And this has been Reece's Reviews for mygeekculture.com.au, produced by myself, Matt Fulton, from Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au. Catch you next episode. Bye.
Bye.